Hey there, this is your teacher, Mr. H, and you're watching History in a Hoodie. Today's episode is about the juvenile justice system, where we will learn about all the ways you teenagers can get arrested. I can't wait to find out, so let's get this show started. What are we learning about today? The standard for today's lesson asks the students to explain the difference between delinquent and unruly behavior and the consequences of each. Then, we will describe the rights of juveniles involved in the juvenile justice system. Finally, we will explain the steps of the juvenile justice system when a juvenile is first taken into custody. Before we start, let's go over some vocabulary for today's lesson. A juvenile is a young person. In Georgia, an offender between the ages of 13 and 17 years old. Delinquent acts are unlawful acts committed by a juvenile that are crimes for adults as well. Unruly acts are unlawful acts that are illegal because of age. An informal adjustment is an alternative to the juvenile court, which includes admission of guilt and 90 days of probation. Probation is a period of supervision by the court following release from detention. The 7 delinquent behaviors are offenses which will result in a youth being treated as an adult in court. An attorney is a lawyer representing an offender in court. Confidentiality is a guarantee of being kept secret or private. Self-incrimination is the action making a statement about oneself that would result in a charge of a crime. All of you watching this video in my class today are 13 to 15-year-old 8th graders, so I can tell you this with a little chuckle to myself. For the first 12 years of your life, if you were to break any law, it would have been your parents who would face the punishment for your crimes. Too bad you can't go back. More importantly, now that you're responsible for your actions, legally speaking, it's probably very important that you learn what that means for you. I mean, not you specifically, because of course you won't be breaking any laws. Of course not. Firstly, it is important for you to recognize that there are 2 sets of laws. Laws that apply to everybody, and laws that apply only to teenagers. You have to follow both, and I only have to follow the everybody ones. Too bad for you. Laws that apply to everybody are called delinquent acts, and these cover a wide range of violations, including theft, assault, illegal drugs, rape, murder, graffiti, loitering, and much more. I can't do it, and you can't do it. The other type of laws are called unruly acts, and these only apply to youth because they all have age limits tied to them. For example, it is illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to possess or smoke tobacco cigarettes. It is illegal for anyone under 21 to possess or drink alcoholic beverages. Unruly acts also cover running away from home, driving without a license, and skipping school. Teenagers also have a curfew, meaning that it's illegal for individuals younger than 18 to be in public places between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., though that varies from city to city occasionally, unless traveling from a school or church function to home. The juvenile legal process begins with intake. Intake involves collecting vital information of the juvenile, age, height, hair color, etc., and determining if there is enough evidence to make charges against the juvenile. If there is not, the juvenile will be released to their parents or guardians. If there is, they may be held in a juvenile detention center for a hearing within 72 hours. Juvenile first-time offenders get one special opportunity that adults do not, almost like a get-out-of-jail-free card from Monopoly, called an informal adjustment. To receive this opportunity, the young person must admit their guilt to a judge and accept 90 days of probation. Should the informal adjustment not be available or accepted, a youth would next face the adjudicatory hearing. In this hearing, the case would be argued in front of a judge and only a judge. At the adjudicatory hearing, the teen would be declared guilty or innocent. If guilty, next would be a dispositional hearing, where a judge determines the punishment, or sentencing, for the juvenile. Finally, if the juvenile is unhappy with the results of the trial, just like adults, the trial can be appealed and the whole thing started over in a new courtroom. But how much trouble can a juvenile actually get into in Georgia, you ask? Georgia does have the death penalty, however, that option is not available in juvenile trials. Typically, a judge may assign probation, fines, mandatory counseling, mandatory school attendance, house arrest, or trips to boot camp or a stay at a regional youth detention center, also known as juvie. Upon adulthood, the case files for juveniles are sealed, so it's like a reset button on your life, but you still don't want to end your teen years involved with the legal system. That sounds like enough legal talk. However, there is one additional detail that's very important for you to know. Depending on your age and the crime, it is possible for you to be treated as an adult in the court in extreme circumstances. In Georgia, there are a series of criminal actions called the 7 delinquent behaviors, which will automatically get teenagers treated as adults. These include the various categories of murder, sexual assault, and armed robbery with a firearm. Basically, the worst types of crime. Instead of protection of rights in a juvenile court, a teen would face the jurisdiction of the superior court. So what? Why do we need a juvenile system separate from the adult system? Now, let's say that you are a young rascal, which you're not, and you get into trouble with the law, which you won't. What is going to happen to you? The juvenile court process is different from the adult process because juveniles have different rights than adults and are treated differently due to their age. Adults' rights are found in the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution. If you watch any cop TV show, you may have heard of the Miranda rights, or the line police must inform a criminal at the time of an arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. In addition to this phrase, adults get trial by jury, right to a speedy trial, and a handful of other legal rights. For the most part, all of those rights are true for juveniles as well, except for one, which we'll get to. And juveniles get extra rights as well. For a juvenile to be arrested, the law enforcement officer has to have much more significant evidence to believe the juvenile committed an offense than for an adult. If arrested, the first and most important juvenile right is that if arrested, a juvenile has the right to make 2 phone calls, one for their parent and one for an attorney. This ties into special right number 2, the right to have a parent or guardian present before being questioned by police. When questioned, juveniles not only have the right not to self-incriminate, as you might say, snitch on yourself, but juveniles must also be taught what self-incrimination is before questioning. Juveniles' names and pictures are never allowed to be made public, so you will never end up in the newspaper for your actions as a teen, and that confidentiality extends to the courtroom where there is no jury. Why not a jury trial like adults get? Well, your confidentiality cannot be guaranteed with 12 random citizens in the courtroom. Trial by jury is the only constitutional right that juveniles don't get. For your final special right, while being held in police custody and after sentencing, a juvenile may never be placed with adult offenders. This also means if you turn 17 while in custody, you are no longer allowed in a juvenile detention facility and will be placed in adult prison. So, with all of these different rules, the process for a juvenile must be different than for an adult in the justice system. It is for this purpose why there are special juvenile courts, where judges only work on cases involving juvenile delinquents. This ensures that the special rights are protected, as juvenile offenders face the legal system. Ultimately, the juvenile system is about correcting behaviors, not punishing behaviors. So everything that happens to a teen in court is going to be much less harsh than for an adult. Now what? What am I going to do with this information? Don't break the law. Wow, so learning about juvenile justice is really important for us to understand. I'm glad we learned it today. Are you ready for some review questions? Delinquent juveniles are those who... A juvenile can be tried in superior court if he or she has committed... What must officers promptly inform juveniles of when taken into custody? Michael refuses to go to school and was caught skipping school multiple times by the police. He also refuses to follow his parents' rules and has been caught out after curfew. What type of behavior would this be classified as under juvenile law? The first step when a juvenile is taken to custody is I hope all of you learned a lot from today's episode of History in a Hoodie about the juvenile justice system. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Just kidding. I don't care about that stuff, but do make sure you study this lesson. Bye now.